My screen actually worked today. All last week I couldn't share this screen for some reason, but you guys can see it, right? Give me a thumbs up.
Indeed.
Yes, sir.
Get those reactions going.
Got it.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us this afternoon, or it's technically afternoon. It just turned noon here in Kansas City. And thank you, Daryl, for joining and coming on so early in the morning to talk about virtual co-working in Microsoft Teams. So this is a presentation that Daryl and I have put together over the past several months as more of an experiential storytelling of how we've designed different perspectives for getting people together in a destination to do some co-working together outside of like the typical, I'm going to throw an hour on the calendar in Outlook and everybody's going to join a meeting. And then after the meeting, everybody's going to go their separate ways and forget what we just talked about. No, we're talking about a destination that's a little bit more persistent that we can go to for some focused collaboration or just focused time and some socializing with people in this remote world. So to introduce myself, my name's John Moore, and I'm a enterprise architect at EY. I started back there in March, so I'm still a little bit new, and have to kind of think through like, okay, where do I work again? What's my title? But yeah, I've been integrating over as an enterprise architect in that space, focused on live event and Microsoft Teams strategy and target architectures and things like that. And in all of my spare time that I have, in addition to my 3 kids that I chase around, I'm also a Microsoft MVP in M365 apps and services. And Daryl, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Daryl Webster, or Daryl as a Service, all the way from Auckland, New Zealand. I work for WM Reply, part of the Reply Group. We focused on modern work, and in my space, I'm a principal adoption and change management consultant. So I get to lead teams and deliver change management campaigns, the magical fluffy word, which is training, comms, influencing people. It's all cool. I feel like I've got a home there in terms of what I do. Like my spare time is creating content and getting up at silly times of the hour. But also I like to paddleboard. I'm trying my hand at photography and enjoying that, being able to be present in the moment and taking shots. And yeah, I think I'm also the sort of person that if you DM me, be prepared to get on a call with me at some point, because I've made a lot of friends on social media, Twitter, places like that, where it's not just a conversation, a thread. We jump on and have a call. So that's how I've got to know John over the time.
Yeah. We're really fortunate to be able to finally created a presentation together after years of talking about it and years of missing each other at different conferences. It's totally a friendship that has been born on social media and cultivated through, meeting just like this with these great tools that we have at our disposal. So I'm excited to talk about this. So virtual co-working in Microsoft Teams. What is virtual co-working? Why do we want to develop something like this? Whenever I talk about virtual co-working, I'm talking about the idea of framing your mindset or building a culture around having a destination that people go to get work done, whether that's personal work or collaborative, like we're going to work in a project together. But it's about the destination. It's about the value that you get from being around other people, even if it's entirely virtual. It's something that we've, kind of lost whenever we all went to work from home during the pandemic. There's a lot more isolation. I especially feel that, starting a new job, having never met people before we could all get together a couple weeks ago and actually have a meeting together, it's hard to really connect with your team. And the work trend indexes, if you followed the Work Lab podcast from Microsoft, they put out these work trend indexes every few months. I think it's twice a year or so. And they keep highlighting that we're seeing lower employee engagement because everybody's scattered all over the globe. And while there's more opportunities for people and more job opportunities to find something that fits you better, how do we combat that isolation and drive like retention so that people don't just leave because they never engaged with their new job and they move on. The hybrid work conundrum that they've kind of coined is that, there's an interesting statistic that's come out that 73% of people want this flexibility and want to be able to work from home and, go run errands during the day and take their kids to school and pick them up. But then they also want more in-person time, and it's not the same 73%, but there's a big overlap between those two 73% numbers of people who like, I want my cake and to eat it too, right? I want everything. And the way that we combat that is a lot of times through technology and the flexibility that the technology brings to us. And I find that, in my former and in my current roles as an architect, just syncing up with the team and seeing the same couple people for like 5 to 15 minutes to do a daily stand-up, a lot of times that's not enough to fulfill those needs for, not feeling isolated the other 8 hours of the day that you don't see those people outside of meetings. So to combat that, we are looking towards the idea of creating these virtual spaces that we can come together and see each other in more serendipitous ways. So 2 different ways that we can talk about this today. I'm going to take the section about creating a co-working space for social focus time. So this is the idea of, hey, I've got scheduled focus time on my calendar and I want to be around other people. It's that type of person who they are very productive when they go to a coffee shop, and just being in that environment, having that music playing in the background, seeing other humans, fulfills that kind of social need, even if they're not talking to those people. Sorry if you hear my 4-year-old screaming in the background. The neighbor dad just came to pick up the neighbor kid, so they're screaming about it. And then Daryl, he's going to talk about creating a virtual co-working space for people that and you're collaborating together on a project. Back in before the pandemic, we would create these project rooms, right? You would reserve like a space that was dedicated to you for like 3 or 6 months, and you could come and go from that space. Well, he's going to talk about recreating that type of atmosphere in the construct of Microsoft Teams. So to jump right into it, we'll get into virtual co-working for the social connection and like what can we get from like an enterprise culture perspective. So a little bit of background. Before I started my new career at EY, I used to work at a local Kansas City firm. You may have heard of Cerner. For the past 15 years, I was a technology architect that was doing the architecture for a lot of Microsoft 365. So I was kind of, in a lot of ways, the face of Microsoft Teams, so I'd have a lot of kind of random ideas come my way from people that wanted to do stuff in Teams. And the idea of co-working came to me from a friend of mine in our transformation office. Her name's Beth. And she saw something on BuzzFeed called Edit Party. And there's a picture of it right here. And, I know that it's Zoom, but that's what they use. And they used Zoom to create, back in May 2020, a virtual space. And it was a meeting that went on 24/7. I believe it's still going on more than 2 years later. And they wanted to create kind of a virtual coffee shop, if you will, so that people could come together and not converse with each other and be disruptive, but to just hang out together, get some focus work done, talk about projects in the chat, that type of stuff. So the way that they set this up is it had some guardrails on it. They had no microphones are allowed. Everybody's like hard muted when they join, but there's a host that's providing some like background music, like lo-fi, chill hop type music that you would hear like in a coffee shop type atmosphere. And you could interact through just seeing each other on camera, or you could go to the chat. That way it was like a very voluntary type of interaction where if you wanted to blow off some steam and complain about, a project you were working on right now, you could do that through the chat without being disruptive, with your voice. So she came to me and was like, this is a really cool idea. I've been doing this for a couple weeks. Is there a way that we could do this in teams? And of course, I was like, thank you for coming to me first instead of just doing this in Zoom, because absolutely, yes, we can do it in teams, and we can do a little bit better. So I'm going to show some of the special sauce that teams kind of brought to the table for us that enhanced the experience above this idea. So the reason for doing this was to capture that feel of being around other people, but also to make new connections. I saw a big opportunity for, interacting with people across the organization that you never would have met any other way, other than you happen to know that this virtual coffee shop existed, and you can serendipitously kind of run into people that way. And as a result, we did see a lot of that happening, which is really cool. And then some of my personal goal that I had as an architect was we wanted to drive the adoption of Viva Insights. So we wanted to get people to set a little bit better work-life balance. That's been a challenge through the pandemic of, am I working from home or am I living at work type of a feeling. So we were wanting to drive the use of Viva Insights, and especially the focus plan part of Viva Insights, to say, hey, here's how you set up Viva Insights. It's really important to set aside time to do focus work. While you're doing that, here's a place that you can go to do that, so that you still get some social interaction throughout that, and you don't quite get like bored and then kind of zone off quite as bad as if you're not doing anything other than focus work. So the last goal that I had personally was the idea of tackling the metaverse, and what are we going to do about these immersive experiences and build an environment where the interaction in a spatial environment. So as you get close to people, you can talk to them. As you get further away, they kind of fade away. We want to show value in having a location that's a gathering point for people to get to. And in my personal opinion, I feel like organizations that are jumping straight into 3D, straight into VR experiences have pretty uphill battles, because it's pretty shocking to the senses. And it's a little bit overwhelming, especially if you've never done VR gaming or something like that. So one of the other examples that we looked at Cerner was we ran a couple of like developer conferences and things internally with this thing called Gather Town. So this is a top-down view that shows the value of having other avatars that you could be physically around. When you got close to them, the cameras would turn on. You could go into these private spaces. But you could definitely recreate this with Microsoft Teams and with the channels construct, and have different channel meetings to kind of break that out. So when we look to build that structure, we kind of took a concept that you'll hear if you're in the metaverse conversations, the concept of a digital twin. That is a tool that you can use to take something, a space in the real world or an object in the real world, bring it into a virtual world, and it doesn't confuse like your lizard brain too much, right? It's something that you can map to, like, oh, I know how an office is in the real world. So if I have an office in the virtual world, I see how things work and how I can move spatially inside of that environment. So taking that construct, we had a cafeteria at Cerner that was broken into different areas. And this is the actual floor map of that cafeteria. And when Beth and I were looking at designing our Microsoft team, we realized, well, we've got this big general area of the cafeteria where this was general eating. People would like kind of chit chat and just meet up down here for social reasons mostly. Then there was this raised area that was kind of like a couple steps up. There was more of a focus area, and just naturally, because it was separated, that's where people who were visiting campus for the day, they would work there quietly with headphones on. They would use these booths along the side for one-on-one conversations with their manager. It was a lot more like work related in this zone. And then if you really had to like dedicate to like getting stuff done, having private conversations, there was this space at the bottom with actual meeting rooms that had sliding doors that closed so that you could have a private conversation. There was a game room up in the top corner called the Regenerate space. This literally had like air hockey and ping pong tables and stuff like that to kind of unwind a little bit. And then we had my favorite spot, which was the bistro. This is where we had our Warm Cookie Wednesday every Wednesday. People would gather down. This area would just swell up with people. meeting up to get cookies and to interact and socially connect. And we wanted to capture that in Microsoft Teams. So taking this construct of these different areas that got created out of a cafeteria, what if we created a virtual cafeteria, kind of broke that up? So the way we did it in Microsoft Teams is, of course, we made it a team, and we made it a public team so that anybody from the entire company could join that team. They could join these meetings that we hosted, and we advertised that on Yammer. If it had gone on, a little bit further, we could have advertised it using SharePoint or Viva Connections, do intranet announcements, emails, things like that. We chose to go a little bit more grassroots and do it via Yammer to tell people it existed, what our goals were, and to come check it out. And every team gets a general channel, right? So that general channel, we called that the main hub, and we created a meeting called the main hub, and it was always running 24/7. And the way that we set up that meeting to just run constantly around the clock was we set it up to have no microphones. We had attendees and presenters split apart so that people couldn't be disruptive verbally, but we had a host who was marked as the presenter. They could share music in the meeting, and then people were encouraged to turn on their cameras, come in, chit chat through the meeting chat, and connect with people that way. And then we had a private channel that we created kind of to recreate this red space down here. We created a private channel that we called planning, and that was only for the host. So if you went through our training, you learned how to share music in a meeting, you agreed to host these meetings and help keep it going 24/7, we would add you to a private channel. This is where we would share cool ideas for what we could do to kind of innovate on this concept of co-working. And then what we brought from Microsoft Teams, the thing that kind of elevated above a Zoom meeting, is we use this as a test bed to play with some new technology, some new enhancements in Microsoft Teams. So we created polls. We would ask people what their favorite Christmas movies are, or I set up a camera and pointed to a 3D printer. I put a poll out there to ask people what do you think John's printing today? So people would add to the poll, and we would see word clouds created. Around Christmas time, we started a whiteboard, and we created this whiteboard with these little zones to talk about cookie recipes, and again, what your favorite holiday movies are, favorite holiday songs, things like that, to get people whiteboarding and kind of have something to do off to the side of the meeting. And what we found through those two concepts is that people started using whiteboard more in their real meetings. And the thing that they told me when I asked them what happened was that they said that because they practiced whiteboarding in this super non-threatening place, that it was just kind of a play area called the co-working space. Because they had done that there, they were more confident to do whiteboarding when it really counted and they were in a real meeting. So that was kind of an unknown benefit that ended up emerging out of that. And because this is Microsoft Teams, we had that better control. So we were able to have that split out of attendees from presenters. We could turn off people's microphone, but leave their camera turned on. And then this last concept is really important. We wanted to make sure that this wasn't Teams bombed or Zoom bombed. And we didn't want somebody external to oh no, they posted the meeting link on Reddit, and now somebody came in and did something terrible to everybody. Well, to prevent that, we instituted the meeting lobby that's built into Microsoft Teams. That way, if somebody was external, if they came in, they got caught by the lobby, and then the host just wouldn't admit that person. So that was a way that we kept people from, doing something wildly inappropriate. We knew that only employees were allowed in this space. So if we're creating a virtual coffee shop, there's a technical challenge that you have to get over, which is getting that coffee shop music, that lo-fi chill hop music, into your environment. And there's two ways to do this. The first is very easy. You can just share your screen and enable the system audio checkbox. And it's the easiest way to get it working. It's going to sound decently okay, but it's not going to be like FM radio quality or Spotify streaming quality. It's going to be a little bit compressed sounding, but it'll be passable, especially if it's lo-fi type music. A suggestion that I'll send out the slide deck at the end of this is if you click on this link, there's a website called Room to Think. where it's this full screen website that has like this nice, cool animation in the background. And it's playing coffee shop style music that's like just ambient type music in the background. You could share that into your meeting with system audio, and now you've got your music problem solved, just for like a quick way to do it. The second way, if you want to go a little bit deeper, is you can get into virtual microphones. So this is, again, practicing these concepts. So whenever you want to do it in the real world for a real meeting, you're better practiced, and you know more of these tools that you can use in live events, or you could use for more produced type of experiences. But we created a guide for how to use something called Road Connect, and then you could take your Spotify playlist that you have for your co-working playlist. You can share that directly into your meeting as a virtual microphone, and then now you don't have to dedicate a screen and do screen sharing in your Teams meeting. So that's another option that you have as well, that I'll share that guide as the last slide in this presentation. And so we got that working. We had the kinks all kind of worked out, where we had this meeting running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was going for weeks, and we wanted to kind of push it a little bit further and experiment in the space. So some other ideas where you can take this to the next level for a social co-working space is maybe break out channels into other music genres. So if you want something a little bit more upbeat, or you want show tunes or something crazy like that, you can create other channels for different music genres, assign hosts to host those channel meetings, and then they could have their own little co-working environments that way. You could also do role specific. So if you've got a bunch of software engineers, a bunch of consultants, HR people, you could break up your channels by like what role there is, and people can meet, kind of a birds of a feather type of an environment where you meet other people in a similar role. We didn't go that direction necessarily, because what we wanted was an entire company-wide channel so that people would meet each other from outside of their organization. And then something that we didn't actually get to do yet, but an idea that I've always been interested in, is the idea of watch parties. So if you've got a keynote coming up, the Microsoft Ignite keynote here coming up in September or October is when it is, you could host a watch party, use the chat to do like live reactions and stuff, and kind of watch it together in this virtual co-working space. What I would suggest for that is you could spin up a channel, do the watch party, and then tear the channel down at the end of the day and go back to like the main hub type of an environment. So you could have these experiences come and go, and it's a shared experience, kind of like what happens in the metaverse when they do these virtual concerts that we've seen in environments like Roblox or in Fortnite. And then if you get into virtual microphones, the next step is to get into virtual cameras. And this is an example of what I did. Was I created an OBS scene where we pointed cameras at my 3D printers, and then we had that poll going like, what do you think John's printing today? And it kind of gave people like something to watch as well. If they wanted to zone out and kind of take a break from their focus work, they could watch these little robots working on these 3D prints. And it was a way to kind of share more information, welcome people to the group, and do stuff like that. So that was a pretty cool concept. And then third, we moved into this world of creating on-campus portals. And this idea was, we stood up these carts, and I actually have this next to me here with these bars. This is a Microsoft Teams room built on Android. So this entire bar has an operating system built into it. It's an all-in-one unit. But you could buy these types of things certified for Microsoft Teams, hang them on a TV cart attached to a television. And then what we did is we rolled it into an open cafeteria space in a corner, and kind of called that the co-working zone for on campus. And what's cool about this idea is it creates a window into the people at home who are in the environment can see what's going on campus. And the people who are on campus in that little zone that was roped off, they could see their colleagues working, doing focus work. And what you share between that is that Teams chat. So you could interact and see other human faces, and people could see people coming and going, from that little cafe space. So it worked out really cool. We didn't have a lot of people on campus at the time to actually go through it. But something that I would consider if you're going to do like a portal onto your campus using a Microsoft Teams room is be sure to be careful about signage and let people know that there's a camera in this area. If you have to work with your HR department to let them know, hey, we're going to rope off this zone, it'll be pointed at this area, people will know that they're on camera. You want to make sure that nobody has like a privacy issue. And then something that's technical that I discovered with this device is that a feature in the Android version of MTR is you can create an auto answer. It's a PowerShell that you can run that when you start the meeting as a host, it will automatically connect to all these little campus portals that you set up, and they'll automatically open up, show the video, and then you've remotely started the environment without having to have somebody run around to all the campuses. So that's just another feature to keep in mind if you want to go the physical portal type of route. So to round out, my little section about doing this from a social environment, how did it actually go? Well, it started out pretty well. We advertised it just on Yammer, and we had over 300 people join the team in the first 2 weeks that we were doing it. And at the peak, we had about 75 people who were joining every week. So we had like a good recurrence of the same people coming, hanging out in the zone. I know at a few points, whenever I was in the space, we had a few dozen people. And something that was really cool that happened was we noticed that in the morning was when we peaked the most, because we had people join from the UK and from Sweden and from Germany, but also when Malvern, Pennsylvania and Kansas City were coming online. So it was a time that like people from multiple time zones saw each other in the space, and we got to talk about how things were in Europe versus how things were in the US at the time. And it was just a great way to connect across geographies for that little window of time before the UK started going offline and started going to bed. And we did run into some challenges near the holiday time. It wasn't all just growth all the way up to the top. Around the holidays, we did see it kind of slow down a little bit because people took vacation. It was kind of hard to keep hosts coming in to dedicate time because people were overlapped taking time off and stuff like that. And what I was hopeful is that we would actually like restart it and kind of bring it back. But to my knowledge, I don't work there anymore. To my knowledge, I think it never really picked back up, unfortunately, because other things were happening at like a corporate level. But not every idea works out perfectly. But it was a cool experience for a couple months there that I feel like we captured something special and we learned a lot from it that we could share with others to start building this culture in your own environment, with some of the lessons that we learned along the way. So that's the idea of co-working for a social or a focus mode type of environment. And Daryl, I'll turn it over to you to talk about a little bit more like project focused, actually getting some work done together type of a work use case.
Yeah,
Take
thanks,
away,
John.
man.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. I think the social aspect of it is definitely an easy entry point, John, because it's not like you're coming in for any particular purpose except to just connect and to be around other people at work. So I love that
Yeah.
aspect about it and the creativity with how the tech was used. For a virtual co-working for a team or a project, this really was born out of a need to work quickly together to deliver a project, and it became something of a culture within our organization. So this really is quite a similar kind of approach, but where it's about creating that space to work together with a singular focus. So yeah, just to sort of set the scene, it was a project that we had to deliver in 6 weeks. Like I'm sort of starting to lose count with the number of times that a client will say, "Oh, that's right, maybe we should tell people about the change that's happening. We should spin up like a change management project as part of this as well." Okay, 6 weeks to go, no problem. We can do this. Our team, we work together to deliver not just training and the like, but we try and go the full hog. We get into designing things. We try and create flashy looking comms. Where we can, we might do like a buzz video or things like that, just to try and, create some excitement and create greater awareness than just sending out an email. So we often have people from all of these different kind of talents and pools to draw from, and try and, us to all work together on the same content. We're across different time zones as well, so that's also a challenge. And in this case, with this project, we also had people on the client side that were across the world as well. So there's that challenge of having to try and engage and get this information, find the right people, connect with people who already have their inroads to communication. So, this little bar graph over here kind of signified the overlap of time that some of us in New Zealand, some of us in Chicago, some of us on the East Coast of the States. And it was about, okay, well, what kind of time can we actually put into the project personally to work on our deliverables? And is there any overlap there where we could share some time together to work on our different deliverables, but also just be in that focused vibe? We're all working on the same thing for the same client. It just makes sense to be around those same people in a virtual sense. And as John said earlier, some of us have or had the luxury of being able to have a dedicated project room. We could walk in and see what's on the wall, basically the plan or what was on the last whiteboarding session, and just really pick up that context of, what's happening in this project and when we have to do things. So yeah, all sorts of different considerations for us, and having to deliver it in 6 weeks' time. We use tools as well that support remote working for even design, so things like Figma and other like video design tools as well to help us do this all collaboratively. And we also had the need to try and set standards for the way we were going to use these tools, and particularly within Microsoft Teams. So with a traditional project kickoff, of course, you talk about these things. And as a team, we were familiar with the standards that we wanted to set, but we wanted to introduce some new things to be able to make sure we could work together in this virtual space. So we sort of called out at the start, we're going to use Planner to coordinate our tasks. That way we know, the things that are in the backlog, things that are currently in progress, and we can organize that into the different work streams. Thinking of that bar graph that I had on the previous slide, we were going to dedicate a few hours a day or a couple of hours a day to this project. So when we're thinking of capacity planning, then we are making sure that there's a good portion of our day where we are going to be working on this content, and that helped us to plan some overlap to be able to join these virtual co-working sessions. We kept everything in the project channel, and we tried to keep a culture or custom of keeping things together in the same conversation. Because we were all familiar with how to use Teams well, we've got over those initial bumps that many people do where they reply to a conversation, but they're actually starting a new one. The idea was to try and keep it all together so that when we were working on a deliverable, it was all in that thread. And if you had to hand off to someone, you could just jump into that same thread and you'd pick up from where you left off. The artifacts, the actual attachments or the deliverables, the files were all attached in that first post so that you could always see it at the top of the thread. And if it ever needed to be updated or changed, then that person would update that first post. But key thing there was keeping it all in the same conversation. And that had its benefits for starting up these virtual co-working sessions, as we see a bit later on. We use things like addressing the channel with the @channel and @person to call people into an actual conversation if we needed to. And we were also experimenting a bit at the time with using Microsoft Loop for forming our ideas and pulling together, tasks and the related artifacts that might be to do with those tasks, and finding some success with that and sharing those loops related to the tasks. So we found that we had two kinds of co-working calls. There was the kind of call where we wanted to just check in and see what everyone was working on, whether they needed help, if there were any blockers, that sort of stuff. But it wasn't your typical stand-up where, hey, let's get together for 15 minutes. Wherever you are in the world, it's going to be exactly the same time. Doesn't matter. And we'll check in and then carry on with our day. No, we wanted to have a virtual co-working rolling stand-up where you have this call that's running within the channel, and people will come in and they'll just report what they've been working on. So we would start that co-working call in the project channel. We would check in and say what we're working on, and that could be verbally, but it would also be able to drop that into the chat. And then you could just continue to stay on that call. It became, like John said, that persistent call where you checked in, you're working, someone else joins the call, well, they can read the thread or just say, hey, everyone, I'm here. This is what I'm working on for the next couple of hours. If you have any ideas or thoughts, feel free to join. Now, the beauty of that, too, is that as you're on that call, these calls didn't get to be huge. They weren't like 75, 80 people or so, but they were more about, your small collection of people that were actually working on the content. And they might chime in and they've got a question. They'll come off mute, they'll ask, and someone will chip in. Just like, we're all sitting together in the same pod or the same project room. The other type of call we had was Deliverable Focus, where you do need to focus on getting something across the line and finishing it off. And so these were calls that we held within that conversation thread that we started. So, within Teams, you don't have to schedule a call. You can have a meet now. And that's exactly what we did. We might, just start that conversation and chat and say, hey, everyone, let's meet in a little while. We need to just focus on getting the script right for a video, for example, and just coming up with some good ideas. So we would start a meet now call in the same conversation thread, and that would keep the call together with the deliverables, and it was easy to go back and check out on what we talked about and what we discussed. And easier for people to join that call too if they wanted to contribute to that, because it's all open. It's in the project team and in this channel for that purpose. Then it was really easy for people to do so. So I'm just going to play a couple of videos and sort of talk our way through it of these examples. This one's a rolling stand-up. So it's in a project team called Korean Fried Chicken. I know we got really crazy with this, and you'll see soon with the virtual backgrounds. But we started that conversation, and it would be like just one sort of conversation. This is the co-working call for today. Feel free to join. And as we're checking in, we'll just drop in a couple of bullets about what we've been working on, what we plan to work on. So I joined that call, and you notice that it's not a scheduled call. I've just started a meet now, and here I am just sitting waiting for a few other people. I could also, if I knew that people were online, then I could just select and drag them in and request to join. But here's Brittany. She's joined the call. She's got an awesome virtual background there with chicken. We actually did end up using the snap filter as well and changing our faces to chicken, but we thought that wouldn't be appropriate for some of our audiences. So anyway, so there's Brittany has dropped in her bullets, and Jess has dropped in hers as well to say what we're working on. Sometimes we needed to break out and focus on something together. So this was an opportunity where we might use a breakout room as part of the virtual co-working space. And that meant that we could go off, we could just focus on a particular thing, come back into that call. So this is just a quick demo of how that works together. In fact, I think I'll just skip along because we've seen that all before. Yeah, joining that call. Here's the virtual breakout room. We have our talk. We share a window or two. And then we can return back to, after we've worked on that project, that presentation. So returning back to the virtual co-working call with the other people as well, and continuing to work. So that worked quite well. And I say that it developed a culture about how we approach projects across the different time zones and places that we work, that we do find sometimes we have to pull together 2 or 3 people to work on a change management campaign pretty rapidly. Sometimes we'll also have 2 or 3 others that will join just to get things off the ground quickly. And because it's all in the open and we're using these virtual co-working calls, people can join. Of course, we did find some stowaways sometimes too. I'll add that little tip there too, that sometimes people would like to join these calls because they were fun to be part of. So it became social. It became like John's need. But yeah, we did focus on the project. This is an example of a deliverable call where, no, it's not. This is the repeat of the previous video. Let's go through to this one. Skip along here. No, back one. Okay, we're good. I know how to use PowerPoint. All right, so this is a conversation about a deliverable. It's about pulling together a quick reference guide. So here you see it in action. I'm mentioning the channel. I also attached the file that is to do with this deliverable, so it's easier for people to find. And then however long that conversation thread gets, that's fine. We can always find that deliverable and continue to work on it. But here I am starting another virtual co-working call about a deliverable. And so I know that there's a couple of people that are going to work on this with me. So they're available and I'll pull them right in. I'll just request them to join. So similar kind of pattern here. We get together. We bring up that PowerPoint. So that's been shared. We start working on it. We adjust a few graphics. There's people there co-authoring the slide and trying to get that quick reference guide ready for delivery for the client. Here's an example of where we might start using a loop. So because this was a internal call, and this is where loop can be supported, we can easily start up a loop. We generally will name a loop as after the task. So it's nice and easy to pair. Here's the loop, here's the task that we're working on, here's the deliverable, and any notes that we have to pull together. It's really low friction. Sure, we could use Planner, we could use other things, as I said earlier, but sometimes you just needed to get some notes down together, talk about the task, list out some of the things that needed to be done, and because it's all in the conversation, it was easy to find later on too. So that's a good example of loop. And if we wanted to use it full screen rather than that skinny little experience that we have today in meetings, then we could open that up in office.com. And I'm sure that is going to improve, especially as we see the meeting stage and those Excel Live collaborative experiences that are coming now too. So John, I think you might have a more update version of the slide because I didn't manage to. So let's switch back to you.
Here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, man. Cool. So to talk about, round this out, where is this going from here? This is a living concept, right? This idea of co-working together. It's going to get better and better as technology advances. So we wanted to call out a few exciting capabilities that are coming out or have already come out in Microsoft Teams to bring it to, again, the next level for you. One of these is Teams Connect, the idea of shared channels across your organization. A lot of the presentations have been about how to do shared channels across a different guest organization. And, oh, now you don't have to change orgs. But there's actually a really interesting concept of using these shared channels inside of your existing organization. And a friend of ours, Stephen Collier, he's got a great YouTube channel where he talks about new features in Teams. He kind of turned my brain onto this idea of, wow, I've been thinking of external sharing all the time. What about internal sharing? So one thing that you can do if you are creating a virtual coffee shop, rather than forcing everybody to join your team in order to get to the co-working space, if you create your main hub or your ongoing forever meeting as a shared channel, then you could expose that channel across to other teams as well. So as you see here, we've got the virtual coffee shop with the hub built into it, but I've shared that with the project team and the communications organization so that I didn't have to draw them into this other team. They could go where they are, and by expanding the reach, you can get a little bit more visibility, get people to jump in right away. So this is generally available now. You can use this feature if your organization has turned it on. And Daryl, you had an idea about using shared channels for project work, right?
Yeah.
Sharing across like project manager portfolios and things.
Yeah, definitely. So thinking of shared channels, that I think it's actually more powerful internally than it is externally. That if you want to share that channel that's related to a project with certain groups or business groups that are involved, now one thing that's an advantage is, sure, it makes it easier for people to participate in that project. They don't have to go off to another team. But it also opens up the opportunity for others in a business group to easily jump in and also join and contribute to the content or the questions. So it's thinking of extending and working out loud in one sense, and it's conveniently there added as part of that project. John, we were also sort of toying with that idea of having like a project management office team, and then having those channels or shared channels being run out of that PM team and then shared into the projects and business units that might be working on that. So it's a kind of a reverse of the team isn't the place to go, but the channel is the place to go wherever you are in the business.
Yeah, it's kind of there's two different ways. You can either centralize all of your projects and their co-working spaces under a PMO or a project management office, share those out to the more tactical teams, or you could have the core project team as the Microsoft team and share the project meeting room, the collaborative co-working space with the the expertises or the subject matter experts in engineering or in these different groups as well. So there's kind of two different ways that you could go with either centralization or decoupling, and going to where the experts are. So I think it's a really cool innovation. The second thing that I want to talk about with new capabilities in Teams is the idea of shared stage apps. This was talked about at a little bit at Build this year, but also recently at Inspire. And in public preview today, if you have public preview for Microsoft Teams, you can install the YouTube app inside of your Microsoft Teams meeting. And this is cool because you can share YouTube videos from the shared stage without having to dedicate your screen. You're not sharing your screen, you're sharing the YouTube video directly. So it's an optimized experience. It sounds and it looks a lot better. One thing that's cool is you can share control. There's a little, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little like icon right here to flip on group control. And that means that anybody who needs to could pause the video, and everybody, it pauses for everybody, so you stay together. But the idea that I had was you could load up something like Lo-Fi Girl. This is a live stream that's gone on for like 400 something days. That's just chill hop lo-fi music. And you could share that into the meeting stage, and that your music is solved. You don't have to dedicate a screen to it and all of that. The caveat is that this is not available in channel meetings at this time. So can't quite use it yet for this specific co-working use case, but it's something to keep aware of and maybe be able to use in other watch parties or things that you host in your organization. And then the third one is probably the most obvious, but this is Microsoft Mesh. This is where everything is ultimately heading, right? Is these immersive 3D environments. But if you attended Build back in May, Microsoft announced kind of the third pillar of Mesh in Teams. There's avatars are coming in Teams. The next is the immersive view, where you can go into a virtual conference room inside of like a regularly scheduled meeting, see each other in a spatial environment. And then the third thing they announced was these ideas of drop-in spaces. So you create a virtual world or a virtual office floor, and it's ongoing. It persists outside of just the meeting construct. So you can meet people and you have this gathering place. So something obviously to keep in the back of your mind, keep watching for these innovations as they come down. Hopefully drop-in spaces will come soon, but I think we're we're probably at least a few months, if not quarters out from that. But it's certainly good to start working on this today. So along a timeline, Daryl and I, we've been talking for months about where do we think this concept is going, because we're in a flat 2D environment just with like a gallery view and that's it. And we're basically right here along the timeline. But we've seen presentations from Microsoft that are like these nth floors and what Accenture's doing in this space, creating like these virtual worlds for the World Economic Forum and all these like super ambitious things. But to go from the gallery view to like James Cameron with virtual jellyfish flying around you, like you're not going to get there overnight. You got to kind of take a journey to that space. So in my world, what I've seen is kind of the immersion or the emergence of the metaverse is starting with these co-working meetings, meeting in a flat 2D environment, get the value out of coming together into a virtual world so that you see other people, you get that connection. And then when avatars come, now you're enhancing the camera view. You're making things a little bit more personalized without having that exhaustion of being on an actual physical camera all the time in your space. And then as we jump to these immersive worlds and immersive 3D spaces, we've built like a culture of gathering together, a culture of coming to a space to work together, so that the 3D is just an enhancement. It's not the first time you've ever seen it. So that's kind of my journey toward the idea of a metaverse in Microsoft 365. And then for collaboration, Daryl, you're a huge champion of Microsoft Loop and creating these Loop environments together. So why don't you talk about what you see as the future?
Yeah, we just saw on the previous slide about how shared channels will play a role in this, and not all the live features are available in channel meetings at this stage, but we look to see that in the near future as well, because I think when we're trying to explain this live stage and PowerPoint Live or Excel Live or even Whiteboard Live, we probably aren't really doing it justice by saying, oh, it is a place to co-author, because we can do that anyway. The live space in these shared channels, or rather these meetings, is about being able to have people all focused on the very same content and not having to switch off to another window somewhere else. But I'm seeing you, I've got my eye contact with the people in the gallery, and we can motion towards the content that we're all seeing in real time with a true shared experience. So that's actually where Loop's going to. That what we have today is quite a very small portion of the capabilities of Loop, and being able to bring that co-authoring experience wherever we're working. But when we get into these Loop spaces, you've seen the promo videos of cursors flying all over the place and high fives and confetti, and I think it's something Microsoft loves, right? It's throwing confetti, whether it be virtual Microsoft Mesh or Loop or whatever. But the point here is that that's going to play a role in trying to lower the barriers for these virtual co-working spaces. That I believe what they're aiming at is there will be meetings that will be able to be hosted within Loop, powered by Teams, but you're in this shared space and you're pointing and motioning to the same things. You're dragging things around, can turn into a whiteboard session, whatever. But it's about lowering the barriers and not really caring so much about where the content is, but just that it's all surfaced on this canvas. The scheduled VR open office hours. So where you've got your social aspect that John talks about, these open persistent spaces, you can leverage the same kinds of things by having a virtual open office hours in VR. So that leads into what we did see in the mesh space, where you can walk into these rooms and you do have your post-it notes, and you're actually virtually creating that room, that project room that we don't have when we're working remotely. So
Yeah,
that
we've
would
seen
be
that there's
that'd be
like
good.
the open common area in the virtual floor, but then the conference rooms off to the sides. I think we're just going to be building a virtual version of what we had in the physical world in
Yeah.
2019 and before, where you can go in and out of these spaces. And I think we'll probably be renting out virtual rooms as virtual project rooms like we
Yep.
used to do, except the great thing is we can just add on more rooms and make the world bigger, a lot cheaper
Yeah.
than building a new floor.
Yeah. And well, we kind of already teleport between meetings, don't we? When we're back-to-back
Mm-hmm.
meetings and we're going from one to the other, but we'll be able to do it in a virtual sense, and truly teleport.
Yeah, maybe
Anyway.
it'll be a little bit more natural, kind of moving between the spaces a little bit. And I think the big key takeaway here is start building your metaverse culture now. This is just a concept. It feels a little bit weird, especially as an IT guy. When Beth first came to me, it was like, that sounds dumb, but I'll get into it just so you don't use Zoom, please. Like I had to do it because we had to do it in Teams. But honestly, like I feel like it's an idea of use the tools you have today. Don't just wait for a vendor like Microsoft or a vendor like Meta to deliver to you a fully packaged, ready to go. Here's your metaverse, and you just take off and it's going to work swimmingly. That's sales and marketing hype. You need to get your organization prepared for this type of a shift. This is a monumental shift, similar to like when we moved from Blackberries to like iPhones and Android devices. That the way that we did computing changed, and the way that we're going to do computing is going to change in the next decade. This is a way that you can kind of get your organization comfortable with the value that it provides without all the weirdness of just the avatars and stuff like that. So
Hey,
my,
John,
my
that
advice is use what you can today to get what you want out of it, instead of just waiting for the metaverse to happen to you. So
that figure you quoted earlier about 73%, and that
mhm.
there's this overlap where people want the flexibility and the autonomy to
Yeah.
go help their kids and then come back to work, but they also want to connect with people. This is where the overlap can be catered to, is this virtual co-working with the tools that we have today. People want to be able to connect. They want that surface area to have these conversations or focus on
Mhm.
work, but they also want that flexibility of being able to go off to have lunch with family, a couple of rooms away, and be able to just beam in and out of work. So I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to seeing what the new tech will help to
Yeah.
help build this culture.
It's going to be exciting times. We can either fight it and become curmudgeons, or we can embrace it and get excited about the value that it provides. It's looking past a lot of the weird facade to see where the real value is. So with that, if you guys have any questions, to go ahead and throw them in the chat. We're happy to hang out and answer questions about our experiences. Otherwise, here's mine and Daryl's contact information, our Twitter accounts, our YouTube channels, as well as some of those takeaways, like how you can effectively share a virtual microphone, stuff like that. So I'm going to drop that slide deck in the chat right here. And there you go. Now you have all these links and everything. So feel free to build your own. So, awesome. Well, thanks for your time, everybody.
Cool.
Thank you, Sharon, for hosting us. Oh, you're on mute, Sharon.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
You guys are great as always. Tons of fantastic information. I've already got people blowing me up with questions behind the scenes. I think there's a few people who might have questions here, so I'm going to leave you to it to answer questions. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we're at the top of the hour. If you need to drop because you have something else, feel free. I'm going to let Daryl and John hang around as long as they feel comfortable doing that. The recording will end when the meeting ends, so when we're done, it'll just go in there. Just a reminder to everybody, we do post these on YouTube. If you've ever like to watch it again later, if you want to share it out with somebody, we will have it linked up on the website, and we will also get the deck and we'll post it out there as well. So thank you guys so much again.
Awesome.
Thank you, Sharon and KC.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Were there any questions for us while you got us?
But does it really
No, I don't
work,
hear
John?
anything.
Does it really work?
It worked pretty well for my group for weeks. I like to include that slide in there about how did it go? Because honestly, it fell apart after a couple months. I think if there hadn't been outside forces, I think we could have kept it going. I'm excited to start a similar concept at my new company. We're already talking about some ideas. I'm owning a lot of the Metaverse strategy for my new place, so I'm excited about trying it again. But not everything works out perfectly, and you might go through a few iterations of something like this because it's definitely a different way of looking at Microsoft Teams than what we've traditionally done for a couple of years. So
I like that it's about creating the opportunity to connect, and it's like this is a user group meeting. We had a presentation, we connected with people, but if we were able to bust out to breakout rooms and have chats and 2s and 3s, then I'm sure people would have all sorts of questions or experiences to share, and creating that extra space is where the technology can be used, whether it be for a social purpose or if it's focused around a project.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see where this goes, and we would love to see if you guys try this type of thing out. Feel free, please share it with us. Show us what cool innovations you come up with. And, you might not have questions today, but if you try this out and you have questions, me and Daryl, you can find us on Twitter. Our DMs are right there, so you can send us messages, and we're happy to, give any advice or talk about any pitfalls we fell into to hopefully help you avoid it. So, cool.
John, you said you had 300 people using yours at the most. You may have told us this and I may have missed it. Was that at Cerner?
Yes, that was at Cerner. We had there at the time there was about 25,000 associates in the whole company. We posted this on all company channel in Yammer, so that was like 27,000 people could see it, as well as like a couple other strategic groups that had a couple thousand people, and we had 300 people join that team that we advertised. It was just a public team.
That was going to be my next question. Was that before or after they started doing the cuts, and how many people were left?
Yeah, it was at the time, it was about 25,000 people total. It was in the late November, early December 2021. So at the end of last year, when we were kind of getting into the holiday season, we thought we would try this concept. So it was before the acquisition announcement with Oracle.
Okay.
So, because that happened right after Christmas. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, both of you.
No problem, guys.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, everybody. Daryl, hope you have a good morning, or if you're going back to sleep, I hope you get to sleep in.
Well, I will later.
Cool.
I'm cheating actually. I'm currently presenting on a live session right now on the 365 Message Center show with Daniel. We pre-recorded, but I'll join the chat.
Don't tell anybody.
Shh, it's all legit. How is he typing in the chat and talking at the same time? Amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, if you guys haven't checked that out, check out Daryl's channel especially. And they run a podcast and it's on its own channel, right? The Message Center show. Yeah, there's a separate YouTube channel called Message Center Show.
There will be.
Okay.
There will
and
be.
then there's
We're on Breakout 365 at the moment.
Everywhere. So I listen to the podcast personally.
Cool. All right.
Awesome, guys.